Hello and welcome to Jackson's Job. Today we're going to learn how to make this delicious chocolate sauce that is perfect for ice cream, cakes, cookies, and more. You're going to love how easy this is to make and how cheap the ingredients are. Plus, for those that can't eat dairy, it's dairy-free. The ingredients are quite simple. You need 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, that's 100 grams. To that we're going to add in some cocoa powder, 3 tablespoons or 15 grams, and then a pinch of salt, about 1/8 of a teaspoon or 0.625 grams. Now if you want to skip the salt you can, but the salt really brings out the flavor of the cocoa and helps balance out that sweetness. If you cannot have salt, you can completely omit it and it will still taste delicious. So I will leave that option up to you. Mix these ingredients together until there are no more lumps. Once you have this well combined, you are going to add in some water. I'm using 3/4 of a cup of water or 180 milliliters. You want to do it gradually so that cocoa will be able to absorb all that liquid. Now you may be wondering, can you use less water than this to save some time in the cooking process? Not really, because the cocoa absorbs quite a bit of this water, and if you leave out any of the water, you risk burning the liquid before it has a chance to fully cook. Plus you want that sugar to dissolve and not crystallize in the end. If you do see lumps, make sure you whisk them out before you add more water. That way you will be guaranteed to have the silkiest chocolate sauce ever. Now, chocolate sauce is different from chocolate syrup only by consistency. I'll show you how to make chocolate syrup using this exact same recipe, so stick around for that as well. Now, you may find it easier to use a wooden spoon than a whisk at this stage, because that whisk will not get into the corners and there will be some undissolved bits that will not dissolve fully as you cook it. And this will help you keep from burning it as you stir. Once you have it all mixed together and there are no more lumps, then you're going to turn this on a medium to medium-high heat and stir it continuously. Do not stop stirring it. Now, one thing to know, anytime you're making any type of sauce on a stovetop, if it boils over or spatters onto the electric stovetop and it is hot, you are at risk for it pitting the glass and permanently marring the surface. I do not recommend making any kind of syrups on electric stovetops unless you are fully aware of this risk. And if you still want to make it, that's up to you. However, I would recommend investing in a hot plate just for those syrups and candies so you never have to risk ruining your stovetop surface. Please make sure whatever you do, don't stop stirring because you risk burning the cocoa and the sugar. Once the mixture starts to boil, you want to reduce your heat until it's still boiling, but just barely, like it's doing right here. If you don't do this, you risk it boiling over and burning your chocolate. Now, once it starts getting a nice vigorous boil like this, you want to cook it for 9 minutes or until the mixture thickens slightly. The whole purpose of this is to drive off some of the water and concentrate that sugar into a syrup consistency. Now, the reason why this is called chocolate sauce and not chocolate syrup is more thick and chocolate sauce is just barely thickened. You will see the bubbles get really vigorous if you stop stirring for just a minute. At this point, you're getting close to it being ready. You want to continue to stir it and be careful. Back off the heat if you need to so you don't get burned. Make sure you're constantly just moving around that spoon, gently but continuously. If you have a thermometer, this is the time to use one. You will get the perfect consistency if you use a thermometer every time, but if you don't have a thermometer, I am going to show you what to look for. Notice how the bubbles have now changed. They are all uniform in size, they're much smaller, and they're vigorously boiling together. They almost look like foam. When you get to this stage, you want to cook it just 1 more minute and then stop. You will now have the perfect chocolate sauce consistency. It has reached 220 degrees Fahrenheit or 104 degrees Celsius for those of you using a thermometer. If you keep cooking it after this, it'll become quite thick, then it'll eventually become a hard candy and eventually burn. Let's cook this a little bit longer and see how it changes. See how the bubbles have become bigger now and it's now boiling much slower, and the mixture just looks and feels thicker. This is actually the syrup stage. If you get it up to 230 degrees Fahrenheit or 110 degrees Celsius, it'll be a nice thick syrup when it's cool. Now this consistency, when it's cool, it's going to be quite thick, a lot like honey. And if you put it in the refrigerator, it's going to become so thick that it's going to be difficult to even use. Once you get the consistency you like, turn off and remove the pan from the heat. Let it sit there a good 30 minutes and come to room temperature before you touch it or even attempt to eat it. You will get burned if you touch this while it's hot. It is very piping hot. It will burn you severely, so leave it alone. After 30 minutes has passed, you can add in vanilla if you like. Only a half a teaspoon is all that's needed, 2.5 milliliters. You don't have to add this in at all. You can leave it out entirely. It'll still be a delicious chocolate sauce without the vanilla, so if you don't have it, don't panic. The vanilla just gives it a nice depth of flavor. Once it has cooled completely, it'll be thick, but it won't be too thick if you have made the chocolate sauce. Let's pour some of this into a glass and see the difference. It comes out quite thin at room temperature. It's a thicker sauce, but it is very thin. This is perfect for making chocolate milk. I'm telling you, it's better than any store-bought stuff you can get. Make sure it is cooled completely before you do this step because you risk breaking glass if you pour hot liquid into a cold glass. Now let's look at the chocolate syrup we made. Now remember, it's only a few degrees difference between chocolate sauce and chocolate syrup. But this is at room temperature and look at how much thicker it is already. Now imagine if you put this in the refrigerator. If you put it into the refrigerator, it would be quite thick, almost like frozen honey or molasses. It is perfect for putting in between layers of cake, however. And when you pour this into a glass, you will see how much thicker it is in comparison. So if you're wanting to use drizzle over ice cream, I recommend making chocolate sauce, but if you want to fill something, I recommend using chocolate syrup. However you make this, chocolate syrup or chocolate sauce, it is going to be delicious and you're going to be asking yourself, why have I bought this all these years? I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Thank you for watching, and as always, happy baking.